What happens when a single voice dares to challenge the status quo? The studio buzzed with the kind of frenetic energy that usually accompanies a high-stakes political debate. But tonight, there was something different in the air. Cameras, their lenses trained like hungry eyes, silently clicked into position, tracking every movement with precision. The hum of the crew as they prepared for the live broadcast was a dull undercurrent beneath the sharper sounds of microphones being adjusted and notes being shuffled. The air seemed thick with expectation, charged with an energy that could only be described as electric. The audience filed into their seats, their whispers and soft chatter creating an undercurrent of curiosity that swirled around the set like a storm on the brink of breaking. At the center of it all, under the intense spotlight of the studio's unforgiving lights, sat Peter Holt, the face of primetime debates. A titan in the world of television, Peter was known for his sharp tongue, his relentless drive to win arguments, and his complete mastery of his craft. His smirk was almost permanent, a mask that hid the razor-sharp intellect behind it. He had spent years on this stage, dismantling arguments, cutting down idealists with the cold precision of a surgeon. His debates were legendary, a display of calculated wit and polished rhetoric. He was the king of the arena, unyielding, unshakable, and unafraid. But tonight, Peter was about to face something he had never encountered before. The challenge was not from a seasoned politician or a corporate spokesperson, but from a 23-year-old activist whose name had recently started to echo through the halls of grassroots movements. Caroline Lewitt was not a household name, at least not yet. She wasn't dressed in the usual suits or designer dresses that adorn the other panelists, and she didn't carry the kind of polished, corporate rhetoric that Peter was used to dismantling. Instead, Caroline wore a simple blazer over a white blouse and jeans, a stark contrast to the tailored suits and flawless appearances of the other experts in the room. But there was something about her that drew attention, something intangible but undeniable. It was the quiet determination in her eyes, the way she held herself with an unshakable belief in something larger than herself. Caroline was not just another talking head, she was a symbol of something more, a movement, a call for change that could no longer be ignored. Caroline's journey to this moment had been shaped by years of witnessing the harsh realities of a broken system. She had grown up in a working-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago, a place where the promise of the American dream seemed like a cruel joke. Her mother worked double shifts at a factory, her hands rough and worn from years of labor that barely paid the bills. Her father had been a mechanic, proud of his trade, until the local garage shut down and he found himself adrift in a sea of unemployment and rejection. And then there was Ethan, her younger brother, whose vibrant energy and laughter were snuffed out by the opioid crisis that ravaged their community like an unstoppable tide. These experiences had shaped Caroline in ways that words could hardly capture. They had made her angry, yes, but more importantly, they had made her resolute. Caroline had seen the cracks in the system, the ways it perpetuated inequality, the way it chewed up and spit out the most vulnerable. She had lived through the despair, felt the weight of injustice, but through it all, she had never lost hope. Instead, she had learned that hope was not something given to you, it was something you fought for. And tonight, she was prepared to fight. The debate began with Peter in his usual element, poised and confident. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we tackle a question that has haunted humanity for centuries. Can one person really change the world, or is this just a fantasy, a comforting lie we tell ourselves to make life seem less unfair? He leaned back, a smirk dancing on his lips as he surveyed the room, confident in the response he would receive. The audience chuckled, a ripple of amusement passing through them. They were familiar with Peter's brand of debate, sharp, dismissive, and always in control. But Caroline's expression remained unchanged. She sat still, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes locked on Peter with an intensity that seemed to pierce straight through him. Peter pressed on, his voice dripping with mockery. We've all heard the speeches, the slogans, the cries for justice, but let's be real here. Change doesn't come from idealism or passion, it comes from power. And power is something you don't simply wish into existence. It's earned, and it's hard-won. The audience erupted in applause, but Caroline didn't flinch. She simply leaned forward, her gaze unwavering, her voice calm but steady. Change doesn't come from power, Mr. Holt. It comes from people, and people are tired of being told that they're powerless. The room went silent. For a moment, Peter seemed taken aback, his smirk faltering as he considered Caroline's words. He leaned forward, his expression hardening. "And what makes you so sure of that, Caroline? What gives you the right to speak for the people?" Caroline didn't hesitate. "I don't speak for anyone, I speak with them. I've stood with single mothers who work 3 jobs and still can't make ends meet. I've marched with students drowning in debt, desperate for a future that doesn't seem to exist. I've sat with veterans who fought for this country only to return to a system that forgot them. These are the people you dismiss as powerless. These are the people who are ready to change the world." Peter's usual bravado faltered, but he quickly recovered, masking the uncertainty with a scoff. "And what good is passion, Caroline? What does passion do when the bills need to be paid, when real lives are on the line? The world doesn't work like that." Caroline's eyes narrowed as she countered. "The world doesn't work for them, Peter. That's the problem. And if we keep waiting for someone else to fix it, nothing will ever change." The turning point came with Peter's challenge. He leaned in, his voice dripping with disbelief. "And what exactly are you proposing, Caroline? Are you suggesting that we tear down the system, start over from scratch? Do you really have any idea how naive that sounds?" Caroline met his gaze without flinching, her voice steady and unwavering. "I'm not naive, Peter. I'm realistic. The system is broken. It isn't serving the people it was meant to protect. And if we don't fix it, it will eventually collapse under its own weight. I'm not talking about tearing it down. I'm talking about building something better." Peter scoffed, a rare crack appearing in his composed exterior. "And who's going to build this utopia of yours? You." Caroline didn't back down. "Me, you, all of us. Change doesn't happen because one person decides to make it happen. It happens because enough people decide they've had enough." The audience erupted in applause, a rare show of solidarity that made the tension in the room palpable. Peter, no longer in control, tried to regain his footing. "And what about the cost, Caroline? Change doesn't come cheap. Are you prepared to pay the price?" Caroline didn't hesitate. "The cost of doing nothing is far greater. Every day we wait, more lives are destroyed, more people suffer. If standing up for what's right means paying a price, then I'll pay it gladly." As the segment concluded, the room was electric with energy. Peter, usually so commanding, was now silent, a rare moment of humility flashing across his face. The audience, however, was buzzing, clearly moved by Caroline's words. As the cameras stopped rolling, Peter approached her, his bravado replaced by a newfound respect. "You're something else, you know that," he said, his voice softer than before. Caroline smiled faintly. "I'm just someone who believes in a better world." Peter nodded, the hint of respect in his eyes now undeniable. "Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time we all started believing." And so the question remained. Was Caroline's defiance a sign of naive idealism, or was it the spark needed to ignite real change? Could one person's voice truly challenge an entire system, or was the world too entrenched in its ways to shift? As the audience filed out of the studio, the debate lingered in the air, unanswered and unresolved. But the questions were no longer rhetorical. They were real, they were alive, and they were about to take on a life of their own. What would the world do now? Would you stand in Caroline's place, refusing to be silent, to be dismissed, to let the system go unchallenged? Would you take up the mantle, or would you settle into the comfort of inaction, watching as the world continues on its path? The world is watching, and the choice is yours. What will you do to make a difference?